Hello, welcome back to Kim Reads. We continue with Wicked, chapter 4 of the second part. A few weeks later, when the children were having snowball battles and Sarima was concocting some medicinal toddy in the kitchen, Elphie left her room at last and skulked down the stairs and knocked on the door of her sister's parlor. They didn't like it, but they felt obliged to welcome her. The silver tray with bottles of hard liquor, the precious crystal carried on donkey all the way from Dixie House in Gilligan, the prettiest and red riches of native carpets on the floor, the luxury of fireplaces at both sides of the room, each blazing merrily, while they could have toned it down some had they any warning. As it was, 4 hid in the sofa cushions, the leather volume from which she had been reading aloud, a racy history of a poor young woman beset by an abundance of handsome suitors. It had been a gift from Fiyero once, the best gift he had ever been sent the sisters. Also the only one. "Would you like some lemon barley water?" said Six, ever the servant until the day she died, unless by luck everyone else died sooner. "Yes, all right," Elphaba said. "Do take a seat. This seat here, you'll find it most comfy." Elphaba didn't look as if she wanted to be comfy, but she sat there anyway, stiff and uneasy in the quilted cocoon of her room. She took the tiniest sip possible from her drink, as if suspecting hellebore. "I suppose I need to apologize for the flurry over chistery," she said. "I know I am a guest here at Kiamiko. I just flew off the handle." "Well, you did just that," started Five, but the other said, "Oh, think nothing of it. We have days like that, and in fact, for us, it usually happens on the same day. It's been that way for years." "It's very taxing," said Elphaba with some effort. "I spent many years under a vow of silence, and I haven't learned how loud it is permissible to get. Besides, this is a foreign culture, in a way. We, our Jickeys, have always been proud of being able to speak to any other citizen in Oz," said Two. "We are equally at home in the ragged vagabond Scrow to our south, as with the elite in the Emerald City to our east. Not that they have ever been out of the Vinkus." "A little nibble?" said Three, bringing out a tin of marzipan fruits. "No," Elphie said, "but I wonder you to tell me of your sister's particular sadness." They sat poised, tempted and suspicious. "I enjoyed my chats with her in the solar," said Elphie. "But whenever the talk gets round to her departed husband, whom, as you may realize, I myself knew, she is unwilling to discuss a thing." "Oh, well, it's so sad," said Two. "A tragedy," said Three. "For her," said Four. "For us," said Five. "Auntie guests take a little orange liquor in your lemon barley," said Six. "It comes from the balmy slopes of the Lesser Kells and is quite a luxury." "Well, just a drop," said Elphie, but didn't sip it. She put her elbows on her knees and leaned forward and said, "Please tell me how she learned of Fiyero's death." There was a silence. The sisters avoided casting glances at one another, busying themselves with the pleat of their skirts. After a pause, it was Two who said, "That sad day, it stings in the memory still." The others adjusted themselves to their seats, turning slightly towards her. Elphaba blinked twice, looking like one of her crows. Two told the tale without sentiment or drama. One of Fiyero's picnic business colleagues, and our Jiki leader, had come through the mountain pass of the first spring thaw on the back of a mountain shark. He asked to meet with Sarima and insisted her sisters be around to support her at his woeful news. He told them how, on Lorlean-mas, he had received at his club an anonymous message that Fiyero had been murdered. There was an address in a disreputable area, not even a residential neighborhood. The clansman hired a couple of brutes and broke down the door of the warehouse. Inside, there was a small apartment hidden upstairs. A place of assignment, obviously. The clansman reported this without flinching, perhaps as a power-mongering maneuver. There was evidence of struggle and massive quantities of blood, so thick that it was still tacky. The body had been removed, and it was never recovered. Elphaba only nodded grimly at this recounting. For a year, continued to, our dear distraught Sarima refused to believe he was really dead. We would not have been surprised at a ransom note, but by the following Lurlimus, with no further word about it had arrived, so we accepted the inevitable. Besides, the clan had gone in as long with an ad hoc collaborative leadership. They demanded a single chief, and one was put forward, and he served well. When Urgi comes of age, he may claim the rights of progenitorship. If he's bold enough, he's not bold at all. Manek is more the obvious candidate, but he's only second alive. And what does Sarima believe happened, said Elfie. And you, all of you. Now that's the grimmest part of the story. Now that the grimmest part of the story had been told, the other sisters felt they could chime in. It emerged that Sarima had some years ago suspected Fiyero of having an affair with some old college chum named Glinda, a Gillicanese girl of legendary beauty. Legendary? Elfie said. Well, he told us how charming she was, how self-affecting, what grace and sparkle. Is it all likely he goes on and on about a woman he was committing adultery with? Men, said two, as we all know, both cruel and cunning. But what better use than to admit fervently and often he admired her? Sarima had no grounds on which to accuse him of slyness and deception. He never stopped being attentive to her. In his cold, morose, withdrawn, embittered fashion, interjected three. Hardly the thing that one reads about in novels, said four. If one reads novels, said five. Which we don't, said six, closing her lips on a marzipan pear. And so Sarima believes her husband was carrying on this dazzler, said two. He must have known her. Didn't you go to ships? I knew her a bit. Elfie said, her mouth beginning to shut herself. She was having a hard time keeping up with multiple narrators. I haven't seen her in years. And it is clear in Surima's mind what happened, said two. Glinda was, for all I know still is, married to a wealthy older gentleman named Sir Chuffrey. He must have suspected something and had her followed, and found out what was going on. Then he had some thugs kill the bastard. I mean, poor Fiyero. Doesn't that make sense? It's entirely plausible, Elfie said slowly, but is there any proof? No proof at all, said four. If there were, family honor would have required a retributive murder of Sir Joffrey. But he's still being robust, good hell. Not only in theory, but it's what Sarima believes. Clings to, said six. And why not, said five. It's her prerogative, said three. Everything's her prerogative, said two sadly. Besides, think of it. If your husband were murdered, wouldn't it be easier to bear if you thought he deserved it, even just a little? No, Elfie said. I don't think it would. Neither do we, admitted two. But we think that's what she thinks. And you? Elfie said, studying the pattern on the carpet. The blood-red red lozenges, the thorny margins, the beast, and the acanthus leaves and rose medallions. What do you think? We can hardly expect to subscribe to a unanimous opinion, said two, but she barreled anyway. It seems unreasonable to suppose that, unbeknownst to us, Fiyero had gotten involved in some political enterprise in the Emerald City. A stay that was to be a month became 4, said 4. Had he political sensibilities? Said Elphaba. He was the Prince of the Arjukees. 5 reminded them all. He had connections, responsibilities, allegiances. Who of us could guess at them? It was his duty to have opinions on things we knew nothing about. Was he sympathetic with the wizard? Said Elfie. Are you saying he was involved in any of those campaigns? Those pogroms? First the quadlings, then the animals, said 3. You look surprised that we should know about these things. Do you think we're so removed from the rest of Oz? We are removed, said two, but we listen to talk. We like to feed travelers when they come to stop. We know life can be rotten out there. The wizard is a despo, said four. Our home is our castle, said five at the same time. Some removal from all this is healthy. We retained our moral fiber unsullied. They all smirked simultaneously. But do you think Fiyero had an opinion about the wizard? Elphaba asked, pressing some urgency. He kept his own counsel, snapped two. For the sake of sweet Lorraine, dear auntie, he was a prince and a man, and we were nothing but his younger dependent sisters-in-law. Do you think he would confide to us? He could have been a high-level crony of the wizard for all we know. He surely would have had liaisons with the palace, but he was a prince. Even if we only are a small tribe. What did we do with those liaisons? How are we to say? But we don't think he died as a victim of a jealous husband. Maybe we're sheltered, but we don't. We think he got caught up in the crossfire of some fringe struggle. Or we was found out in the act of betrayal in one excitable group or other. He was a handsome man, said two, and none of us would deny it, then or now. But he was intense and private, and we doubt that we'd loosen up this affair. By the smallest gesture, a sucking of her abdomen and a squaring of her shoulders, two betrayed the foundation of her position. How could he have succumbed to this Glinda's charms if he had been able to resist his own sisters-in-law? But, Elphie asked in a small voice, do you really think he was a spy for someone? Well, why was his body never found? Said two. If it had been a jealous rage, his body wouldn't have needed to have been removed. Perhaps he hadn't died yet. Perhaps he was taken to be tortured. No, in our limited experience, we think that this smacks of treachery of a political stripe, not a romantic one. Said Elphaba. You're pale, dear. 6, please, a beaker of water. No, said Elphaba. It's just so... One never thought of the time. I never... Shall I tell you what little I know of it, and perhaps you can mention to Sarima? She began to pace. I saw Fiyero, but at the oddest possible moment, family solidarity kicked in. Dear Auntie Guest, said two in a responsible tone, we are under the strictest orders from our sisters not to allow you to tie yourself by chatting about Fiyero and the sad circumstances of his death. Clearly, two had to get this worked out, so as the appetite to hear what Elphaba had to say was huge. Stomachs were rumbling for the meat of it. But propriety won out, for fear of Sarima's wrath if she were to find out. No, said two again, but I'm afraid we mustn't express undue interest. We may not listen, and we will not tell Sarima what we hear. In the end, Elphaba left them, drooping. Another time, she kept saying, when you're ready, and she's ready, you see it's essential. There's so much grief she could be released from, and that she herself could lift too. Goodbye for now, they said, and the door closed behind her. The fires in the twin fireplaces mirrored back and forth across the room, and they took up positions of frustrated worthiness at having to obey their older sister. Curse her to hell. And that's the end of that chapter. See